the PodBarber. Coming up on today's show.
Someone described solitude is an achievement. It becomes an achievement. And getting to that point where you have that solitude and are able to focus on one thing with no other distractions is like a rare luxury. So the older I've got, and as life becomes busier and busier, that opportunity for a bit of
you time,
yeah, just chilling out and being able to focus on nothing else and just switch off, it becomes vital. You have to do it.
You're listening to the PodBarber. I'm taking conversations from my barber's chair deeper, further, and I'm championing the chat. Men's health and well-being takes centre stage. With help from my guests sharing knowledge and experience, stories from their quests, we tackle the taboos. We're all learning together. It's emotional. We're just dudes. So feel the positive vibes we're sending out to you. It's simple. Join my tribe. Subscribe to the PodBarber. You, my friends, are not alone. Who's next, please? Well, I'll tell you who. We got Dave Clarke here today, a very keen fly fisherman, amongst other funky things. Dave Clarke, or DC, as you're so widely known, I'm thoroughly excited to have you here today, exclusively nestled here under my imaginary spinning mirrored disco ball, to acknowledge your unique experience and interpretation of your deep, bassy relationship and love of music, working and performing live, co-creating Uncle Funk, which was a huge part of so many people's happy music memories, to the best nights of their lives. Yes, you have imparted yourself knowingly and subliminally to thousands of funksters all over the world. You've played consistently with amazing musicians of our times, decorated in Diamante encrusted catsuits, glammed up to the ultimate disco glory, not to mention Uncle Funk's notorious 80s army of funkadelic, fun-flared, fancy-dressed fraternity, whom loyalty to your fun factory of your funky flowing flavours never ceases to eclipse me. You united them all. You played Glasto when it was still funking cool, for funk's sake. You've been, and still are, a hardcore publicist to a magical kaleidoscope of current working artists from across the genres. Besides all of that, you're an absolute dude, one of my friends, and I fully expect you to set the mic on fire. I can't funking wait to hear you, brother. So for all your funky fans with admiration, share your story upon my station. Dave Clarke, it's over to you, man. Just explain how cool it is to be you and all the things you do.
Wow. How do I follow that?
No worries, my friend. Well, I also write a little poem, or I call it a noodle. So this is your noodle time. You love the fish, the fin, and the line. Have you always been a sucker for the fly? For the fly rod, yeah. For the fly rod, yeah. A little bit of gill is where you get your chill.
Well, I'm emotional at that serenade, although I will say I'm not familiar with the lyrics or the melody. But it's the thought that counts. That was wonderful. It's a yes from me. You're through to the next round. Thanks, Mick.
Like, we glossed over the fly fishing part at the start. I know how much you're hooked on that pastime. You travel with some very cool people out to Scotland to chase the trout. Even you take my twin bro Jim, so big up to my brother. Just what is it about the sport that puts a bend in your rod, fella?
I've liked fishing since I was tiny. There was a little guy when I lived in Portchester before we moved to Portsmouth. There was a guy called Mr. Parsons who seemed like Yoda at the time. He was so much older, and he and his old another equally old friend used to take me beach casting down on the shore at Portsmouth. And so the first time I went, this guy he sort of told me what to do, and we lobbed out a bit of bait, and then I got this fish. But instead of reeling it in, I just ran into the sea. I thought that's what you do. If you hook a fish, you go and get it, instead of reeling it in. So they were like, I was only about 3 or 4.
Like a retriever.
Yeah. But anyway, I can't remember what it was. It was like some sort of like sole or, one of those sort of flatfish things. And had that for dinner, and that was it. So I was really into fishing from then on. But then when we moved up here to Saffron Walden, I was wondering where the sea is. It was like I'd never lived anywhere where I couldn't see the sea. So moving here was really strange, and I didn't go fishing for years until, Ken Herring and his brother Greg Herring.
Their names just...
Yeah, well, I'm talking as if like the whole world doesn't know who they are, but we know who they are, and so does everyone in town, I'd like to think. But their mum, Carol, and her partner, Nick, they used to go out fishing to Bordeaux Pit or Whistlesford.
Yeah, man.
And if you was really lucky, you'd get invited along. And so that was my introduction into course fishing, which I kind of got into. But I really got into fishing when I went up to Scotland with your old next door neighbours, my oldest friends, Tim and Tom. We went up there. And the first year I went up there, I wasn't fly fishing because it just looked way too difficult and I didn't have the time to master this. But when I came back that year, I thought, I'm going to get into this. And myself and Steve Smith, we went and got rods and started going fishing at local pits and lakes and reservoirs and got the hang of it. And then the next time we went up to Scotland, we experienced the real thing for wild fish in lochs, in the mountains. And once you do that, all kinds of other fishing seems a little bit second rate. So that was the start of that about 20 years ago, and I've been doing it ever since. I love it. Absolutely love it.
It's do you know what? I used to fish and I got very addicted, and it's one of those sort of sports, isn't it? It's, you just literally dial in, don't you? And you start reading magazines and trying to work out how to tie your own flies. I was more of a carp fisherman, so sit on the bank, and it was more about not moving around and being sort of light on your foot. It was more about collecting an array of sort of weaponry, designing your own pod, sitting there, hunkering down. You put all this effort in, you dingled your fucking line out there and you'd sit there for 8 hours. Eventually, I realised that it wasn't the fishing that I liked, it was the fishing, the process of it. So I started to manoeuvre a bit more myself. And Jim, bro, obviously I know you go with him. He absolutely loves it.
Yeah, but I've described what it is that I really like about fishing to other people before. But what it is that you're focusing on one thing. Like once you're there, you're totally in the zone, completely focused on what you're doing. There's no other thought going through your head. And your brain is kind of divided with so many things demanding your time and attention, whether it's like work, or the band, or family life, which is mental when you've got 2 young kids. It's just constant, non-stop overstimulation, 24/7. You can't escape it, and it does my head in. So when I'm going fishing, it's like all of that background noise ceases, and I'm, for once, focusing on one thing for a long period of time. And someone described solitude is an achievement. It becomes an achievement. And getting to that point where you have that solitude and are able to focus on one thing with no other distractions is like a rare luxury. So the older I've got, and as life becomes busier and busier, that opportunity for a bit of kind of
you time,
just chilling out and being able to focus on nothing else and just switch off. It becomes vital. You have to do it.
It's fundamental, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to do it. And so lots of people have their own ways of relaxing. My wife Claire, she loves going horse riding. Whatever it is, you have to have something that allows you to switch off from everything else, which makes up 99% of your normal life. And for me, that's going fishing, fly fishing in particular, that's my escape. So whether I'm on a boat at Grafham Water or up in a hill loch in the Highlands of Scotland, as long as I'm doing that for a period of time, I feel completely refreshed and can just go back, and I'm better equipped to take on life again,
Yeah, so I don't know if you've been able to get out. Like recently, we're sort of, I'm not sure when this pod will be released, but we're currently in a lockdown, so it's difficult, isn't it? But have you been able to actually get out? I don't even know if you can.
You can go out fishing at the moment. So yeah, I've done it a bit, but of course it's been the winter.
You're not after the perch.
And I'm not really. I am quite a fair weather fisherman. I mean, I don't mind fishing in winter, but I never often think about it. It's normally around about this time of year, we get to March, just as the river season finishes, that my brain, because of the weather changing, you start seeing things grow in the garden.
Yeah, man.
I'm just thinking, fly fishing season, everything's gonna kick in.
Start to dream about trout swimming about and you putting a hook in them.
I've already got my plans sorted for this year. I'm already going. I've got trips to Grafham planned with Jack, and we're waiting for that northerly wind. Just so we can go on the North Shore and blow out of that bay there, and we'll just be pulling them out. Or Jack will anyway. Puts me to shame every time we go now. But then I've also got a fishing trip at the end of July with the family and Tim and Tom, where we always go and where I've been with Jimbo before. So we're doing all of that. And then before then, I'm just in the middle of planning a little trip with Stan to Loch Arkaig or Loch Garry. We went to Loch Arkaig last year and just had this incredible afternoon where we didn't know, what to expect, but we went out on the boats and we were just cruising about at about 4 miles an hour or something. It's pretty slow anyway. And all of a sudden the old rods just went, and I caught, like, the first fish I caught out there was the biggest wild brown trout that I've ever caught in Scotland in 20 years. So I was thinking, I like this place.
What, just out of interest for, the record holders of all these things, what was the weight of that fish? Do you remember?
Oh, it wasn't huge. It was like 1.5 pounds.
Yeah, they're not big, are they?
But they fight like submarines. Yeah. I mean, down here,
it's a true trout, isn't it? It's like an original,
It's a proper glacial.
Yeah,
it's been
proper.
There. Its genes go all the way back to the Ice Age or whatever.
I love all that. Yeah,
it's just great. So we
You hit what the high of fishing. That's it. That's
kind of. I mean, it wasn't just. Apologies to anyone listening to this who can't stand fishing, by the way, but it wasn't just catching the fish. It was the whole setting. I mean, we drove past Loch Lomond and Loch Lockie, and just went through all this fantastic
amazing
scenery.
Environment and scenery. Yeah,
completely.
Yeah,
and then we'd done our research. So we knew where we could park the van and then get out the boat and blow it all up and whatever. And so we got it out and we went out, and I kind of had this fly. What was it called? It was like a claret bumble or something like that. Anyway, so we were just going out and we were discussing what to use, and then we saw this guy who was fishing from the bank, and we just said to him, "Look, have you had anything?" Textbook thing to say to another fisherman. Any luck? And he said, "Yeah, we've had a couple." It was like, so of course, next question: what fly were you using? And he told us. So that was it, straight onto one of these flies. And about 20 minutes later, we're just going right across this loch. And this loch's about 16 miles long. I mean, it's vast. It's much bigger than anything that we'd normally take on. So we're just blind faith, just having a go. Yeah. And all of a sudden the rod went and we got it in, and it was a beautiful fish. Really nice. And Stan had one that snapped him off. Sound like that Far Show character, Stan had a couple of roach. And, but yeah, it was great. It was so we look back on that, and it was just a totally brilliant setting. And there were some bays that we pulled into, which, if you want natural beauty, I defy anyone to say that isn't mind-blowing.
Yeah, I'm excited to get up to that part of the world myself. I'm there a little bit later in the year.
Mean, Jim finally came up with us, your brother Jim, and he's not stopped talking about it since.
Yeah, Jim, well, it's hard to get Jim or I to stop talking, but you've done a good job of it so far, pal.
Yeah.
So just to sort of move on.
That's why I'm here, mate. Yeah.
We understand the fascination with fish.
Yeah.
So when you think about some of the connections in life, I'm talking more about human that you've made. Is there any particular person or event that really sticks out to you, Dave?
Yeah, there's a couple. I mean, when I was about 10 or 11. I was already into music by then, but I saw the video for The Reflex by Duran Duran, and that's when I realised who was playing bass, because I didn't realise it, but I've always listened to bass lines. I just, loads of people can sing lyrics to songs. I could hardly sing the lyrics to any songs because I'm not listening to that. My default setting is I'm just drawn to bass lines. Mm-hmm. So I'd been listening to all this music and just loving all these bass lines, but didn't realise it was the bass player doing that. And then this video by Duran Duran, it's like a live in concert video. And that's where I saw somebody's hands moving and making that sound that I was listening to. I was like, oh, right, well, what's that then? That's the slightly bigger guitar. What's that? And then obviously someone explained to me, that's the bass guitar. So at that point, I knew I was interested in bass guitar. But it took me another 5 years to actually get a bass. And that was after I'd left, like the county high. So, I mean, I didn't even take music, at school. But that was a complete game changer, getting that bass, because I just wanted to do it. And I really, really, my parents thought it was another flash in the pan. So, I mean, they quickly realised that, actually, Dave's bang into this. So I worked for a year, then went to college, and that was studying music. And then as a result of that, I've always played in a band ever since, and now sort of work through PR in the music industry and have done that now for 22 years now. So that one moment has had a huge knock-on effect, which has had, it's kind of dictated the path of my life. That's definitely one very, very important moment.
I love to listen to those things as well. When you recall those moments, don't you? It sort of takes you right back. You can, and you're straight back in that moment. Yeah. And it's the child in you that sees something that you love to do. Yeah. You've been able to grab that toy and play with it ever since.
And if you want, here's the icing on the cake. And get the clangometer ready, because I'm going to drop a name in. But I actually got to interview John Taylor, the bass player from Duran Duran, for Bass Guitar Magazine.
Mm-hmm.
It was a front cover feature, and I was so lucky because I was talking to my editor, a fantastic guy and brilliant author called Joel McIver. Look him up, people. He's if you like your rock music, heavy rock and heavy metal, he's your man. And anyway, he called me and he said, listen, have you got one of these Aria Pro 2 SB1000 basses? I said, yeah, I've got 2 of them in my living room. Why? He said, well, look, can I borrow one? And I might need one for a photo shoot. I was like, yeah, sure. So what are you doing? He said, well, I'm interviewing John Taylor from Duran Duran tomorrow. I was like, whoa, back up. I said, you're interviewing John Taylor tomorrow? And I said, and you never mentioned it to me. He said, oh, yeah, I forgot you're really into them, aren't you? I was like, yeah. And he said, well, look, why don't you come with me? It's in Manchester. He said, look, we'll come up with some excuse. You can just be my editorial assistant, carrying my bag in or something like that, and sit in on the interview. I was like, really? And he said, yeah. I was like, okay. Fantastic. Happy days. So, I'm like, Claire, guess what? I'm off to Manchester. Anyway, so I told Claire about it. She was like, pretty pleased for me, as you can imagine. And then the next morning, I'm just about to leave to go to the train station to get up to Manchester. And I had a voicemail on my phone. This is like 6:45 in the morning. And it was Joel, the editor. And he basically said, look, I'm absolutely stacked out here. Can you do the interview?
Yep.
So, but at that point, it was kind of excitement and blind terror. But I just thought, grow a pair, say yes, worry about it afterwards. So that was it. I just went up there, and I was so nervous. I mean, and I don't get nervous very often, but my legs were shaking. I mean, I remember sat at this bar at the Malmaison Hotel in Manchester, and my legs were literally. I was so nervous about doing this because they say don't meet your heroes, and I'm thinking, well, he's definitely one of my biggest heroes, without doubt. And so anyway, long story short, we did the interview. It went on much longer than, the time that his PR had allocated. But we had a great time. We had a really fantastic chat. And I got this note sort of from his publicist sort of saying, oh, look, John never says this, but, apparently I don't know what you guys were talking about, but you really loved it. So, me and Joel are thinking, maybe he's just blowing smoke, but, And then we got the invite sort of saying, hey, look, for the photo shoot, do you all want to come over to John's house? He said, you're all welcome. So that was like, great. So we drove over to this ridiculous kind of palace over in Wiltshire.
I mean, they were massive at that point.
They were the biggest band in the world for a few years. I mean, they had a level of success that only a few actually very rarefied.
They were sort of like proper gods.
That sort of 83 to 85, that period was where it just went mad for them. But so, very successful, clearly made a lot of money out of it. I mean, this place is crazy that he lives at, and that's just his kind of UK base.
Yeah.
And but we went there, and it was wonderful. He got out all of his bass guitars, including the Music Man Stingray that he inherited from Bernard Edwards from Chic, who's another huge influence on me, of course. And so naturally, as soon as John nipped out the room, I was like, give me that bass. I was like, quick rendition of Good Times. Yeah, which I didn't realise at the time, but Joel was filming it. This little clips surfaced recently.
That's so cool.
So he did that and played some other guitars that are in like some of their videos and things. And that was amazing. And then I got to interview him one more time about a year and a half later at the London Bass Guitar Show. So that
did he actually remember you?
He did. He actually said, hi, Dave.
Wicked.
And at
That's
the
so
time
good.
when we did the first interview, Claire was pregnant with Jack, and he actually said, I can't remember if he said boy or a girl or, what.
He predicted.
He knew that, he remembered that Claire was pregnant, right? and he asked about it. And I said, oh, yeah, well, little boy Jack's arrived, and we were expecting Ivy at that point. So, I didn't think I'd be having that conversation with John, but he did. He remembered. So I was thinking,
yes, people are persons, aren't they? So just nice to be able to have that.
Yeah, he was
shared moment.
He was great, and from a personal point of view, it was a relief that I can say that. But he just really was.
What
fantastic.
A great tale!
Yeah, I still can't believe it actually happened. I photos pop up on your timeline on Facebook or something. I'm like, oh yeah, God. That's real. That's not just some odd fantasy. I'd say, wouldn't it be great to go around? No, I actually did do that. And so Joel and I, like a pair of kids, when we were leaving, we actually just stopped in his car on the driveway and both just started cracking up because neither of us could believe that we just had this experience.
Yeah, landed that opportunity.
Yeah, it was nuts, completely nuts.
Well, clearly, Dave, you've worked with so many super cool, compelling individuals. That's a great story in itself. But have you got any little scandals from the back catalogue, some of the crazy moments that you're happy to share? Like, I mean, you can name drop, you don't have to name drop, but just some of your funnies, man, because I know you're full of them.
Well, all right. So I was going to tell you the James Brown story, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you about the Canadian Customs story. All right. So it's got to be about 20 years ago. I was head of press for Eagle Records, and one of the acts that they'd signed was the blind guitar player, Jeff Healey, who's like an absolutely huge star in Canada. He's actually in the Patrick Swayze film Roadhouse. There's like a band playing a blind guitar. That's the Jeff Healey band. So part of what I had to do was take some press over to Ottawa, which is where Jeff lived, and we were going to see a show. I think he lived in Ottawa. Anyway. That's where the band were playing, so that's where we were. And took over some press, and because of some deals that the record label was signing, my marketing manager and also my MD came with us. So there was a great guy who's sadly no longer with us called Andy Gill from The Independent. Lovely guy. We've all gone over there and we get to customs, and Andy Gill's telling this story about a press trip that he'd been in Amsterdam. And so we're all just listening. We're just waiting to get, passport control. And I can't even remember what the story was about, but what I do remember is him getting to this bit of the story where he says, and this guy comes out with a big bag of weed, right? And we were like, yeah. And then there's a tap on my shoulder, and I turn around, and there's a armed guard with a sniffer dog at my feet waving its tail. And I'm like, okay. And he said, "We step out the line, sir." And I'm thinking, you just think, shit. so anyway, that's it. Me and about 10 other people are kind of walked off into, this area where they start going through everything. And I'm like, this is my first ever foreign press trip. All right. And so I've never been pulled out for this kind of interrogation, if you like, and full search. But it's happened now when I've got my MD, my marketing manager, 2 members of the national press on my first ever press trip. So
Spicy.
I'm feeling a bit tense at this point. So anyway, they go through everything and, and they say, "Do you know why the dog's pulled you out the line?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm guessing it's weapons or drugs." He said, "That's right, sir." And I said, "Well, I don't have either on me. I can guarantee you that." He said, "Then you won't mind us going through everything." I'm like, "You do what you got to do. Go for it." My conscience was clear. Anyway, they get, sometimes they rub stuff with this little gauze and then put it in a machine.
Like a lint cloth type of thing to collect the real micro dust particles.
Like
I've had it happen to me many
I mean, they
time.
could use these things on Time Team because essentially anything that's happened in the past 20 years is on there.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm totally relaxed until they start going through my wallet.
Oh, wow, it's dangerous.
Now, that wallet, at that point in time, I'd had since I was about 15. It had been to every party I'd ever been to, okay? And I'm not going to sit here and just say, you know what, I've lived like a monk my whole life, because I haven't. You know that.
Yes.
All right? So I was at that point, can I swear?
Yeah, man.
I've king shit myself, all right? And so he's rubbed it through there and put this thing in the machine. And I've just watched this machine essentially just go, it's like red lights flashing. I'm like, oh no. And he came back and basically there was a whole load of different things on there. I mean,
trace elements from the periodic scale.
There were things I couldn't even explain that were on there. I was like, really? And so I thought, okay, am I in trouble? So he just read out this report of what was on all these trace elements of this, that, and the other. And I was like, oh shit. And so I thought, play it cool. So I said to him, really? Wow. I said, well, I'm surprised that's all you found on there. I said, that wallet's been to every party I've ever been to. And he said, okay, do you know what's going to happen next? I'm like, no. He said, okay, well, look, we have reason to believe that you're trying to bring illegal substances into...
in micro doses.
into Canada. All right. And so we have grounds to, search you further. So I was like, all right, okay. So I'm frog marched into this cubicle. There are 4 armed guards. I mean, it's a cubicle about the size of this one. Right? Seriously.
Yeah. Proper.
Guard there, and there, and me in the middle.
You can barely bend over.
Wait. Right? And then they read me my rights. The full on, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you do. I'm like, I'm going to prison. So he said, do you understand what's been said to you? I'm like, no. I said, I've never been busted for
just
anything.
up.
Yeah, literally. I'm just here on a works press trip, and now this. All right. So he said, okay, well, look, we're going to strip search you. I'm like, oh, great. And if we don't find anything, then you're free to go. So I'm like, okay. He said, okay, we'll start by removing your jumper. So I do. I'm just going to take it off normally. And the guards move in with the guns. It's slowly. So So I'm now undressing
serious.
very slowly in front of 4 armed guards and another guy reading me my rights, who's read me my rights. So I'm just stood in my boxer shorts, right? Just my boxer shorts. And he looks at me and kind of, yeah, go on then. I'm like, seriously? I've got to step out. And he said, yeah.
Yeah.
So in what I can only describe as not my proudest moment, I then am stood there naked in front of these armed guards.
You should have helicoptered them.
And then he says, squat.
Oh.
All right. So at this point, I'm now hearing dueling banjos in my head. All right. I'm just thinking I'm going to need counselling after this experience. And I squat, which I guess was essentially to see if I was holding anything between my arse cheeks. And as soon as I squat and they didn't, it said, okay, you can get dressed, you're free to go. So this isn't the end of this story, though. So I get dressed. My marketing manager, who's a bit of a character, he just takes one look at me and he's like, Davey boy, he said, you've gone grey. He goes, right, let's come get you a drink. So we get back to the hotel and my marketing manager, we're having a drink. I'm so uptight, I can't eat. I didn't eat for a day and a half after that, right? I just wanted to go home.
It really affected you.
I'd had enough, right, already. Yeah. And now I've got to work for 2 days, right? And this is, my first foreign press trip. So, I feel like I put a lot of pressure on myself to get it right.
Yeah.
So we're sat there in this hotel bar after this incident, and my MD's, he sort of said to me quite sort of flippantly, "Oh, good job, I didn't check my wallet. They found coke and all sorts on there." I was like, "Oh, well, great, that's very handy, very helpful." So we go to the gig that night. The gig is great. Afterwards, my marketing manager, he's like, "Listen, we're all going for some drinks with the band. You coming?" And I was like, yeah, actually, no, I think I'm going to call it a night. I'm jet lagged already. Tomorrow's like showtime for us. We're doing all the interviews, so I'm going to call it a night. Very sensible, Dave. All right, okay. That was it. So we go to bed. I get woke up the following morning about 6:30, 7 o'clock. And he's like, Davey boy, you awake? Well, yeah, obviously. He said, there was an incident last night. So after the day before, I'm like, oh no, what? And he said, well, Knocker got into a fight. Nice. I'm like, who with? He said, the drummer in the band. I was like, what? Wow. What happened? He goes, I don't know, but he's not going to be at the press today because he's now on a plane to Toronto for corrective surgery of the double fracture on his nose.
Oh, wow, yeah, good hit.
Right, okay. He said, but the press can't know about this. Oh, right, okay. So we go into the interviews, and there's Joe, the bass player, Joe Rockman, I think his name was, and the press guys start talking to Jeff, and it's immediately obvious to me that Jeff doesn't know that the journalists don't know what's happened. So I'm kind of like, can I just have a quick word? So I drag the bass player out of the room. I'm like, seriously, if the journalists get wind of what happened last night, forget the feature. You've just got a big news story of record label beats up band, all right? So can we avoid that? It's like, yeah, of course. So he goes in, the bass player goes in, has a quick word with Jeff. And he's like, oh, right, okay. So, and then all cool. So the journalists never found out about this, and the press ran, and it was all fine. And so my MD's, obviously in disgrace, if you like, flew home early. So after everything that's happened, I then get a call saying, I've left my wash bag at the hotel. Can you bring it back for me? Now, this is the guy that said, good job, they didn't check my wallet, I found coke and all sorts. So I'm like, this is my MD, and I can't believe I'm saying this to my MD, but by now I've had enough. I'm like, if there's any drugs in that wash bag that I'm bringing back for you, and he's like, Dave, there's nothing in there. I'm like, right, okay. But of course, after everything I've been through on the way through, on the way back, has anyone asked you to bring anything back? Yeah, this wash bag, everything searched again. I'm thinking, please don't check my wallet, so no problems. We get home. I got off the plane. I kissed the ground and declared I'm never going to Canada again, So, which I have since, but I might not go. I might not go to Ottawa.
Yeah.
So that was my baptism of fire into foreign promo trips.
I mean that's a real cracker, isn't it? And it's I can really picture it. You've told it perfectly, because I've been in the scenario myself where I've gone into airports, and not because of just a general pull out, the dog was wagging his tail at me, but I've just generally looked like somebody that they're going to pull over. So I've been pulled over. I mean, I've travelled all over the world, man, countless amounts of times, but I've never been strip searched. They've never taken it that far, but I've had the lint cloths. They've found stuff that I've had necklaces taken off me from transiting, illegally made wooden things, all sorts of stuff.
Well, you'll understand then that this informed my approach to trips in Dubai, where what had happened in Ottawa, I'd have got 4 years in prison.
Yeah, man.
By no questions asked.
I forget the DJ, but he took
some Groove Rider, was it?
I think it was, yeah.
Yeah. he had like a microscopic bit of
a burner
hash
weed.
stuck on the sole of his shoe. 4 years, no questions asked. They don't mess about. So when Elliot Smith, I managed to blag Elliot to come and give me a hand for a few trips that I did over in for the Dubai Desert Rock Festival and the Dubai Desert Rhythm Festival. And for that, I mean, the one in particular that stands out was Velvet Revolver and Muse were playing, some Robert Plant, some wicked bands. But anyway, we were all very, very paranoid about the customs in the UAE, and we went to extraordinary lengths to make sure that new wallets.
Yeah.
My cards went through the dishwasher. It's just like no chances, new trainers, everything, right? And we also, because I didn't know whether I'd, smoked anything at that point within 40 days of whether it's out your system, and I didn't want to take any chances. I mean, bearing in mind, I'd also been to Amsterdam, all right, so the chances are there was something in my system. Now, in Dubai, if you get caught with something in your system, it's called retrospective consumption. Mm-hmm. Again, no questions asked. 4 years. We'll see in 4 years. So I was kind of a bit paranoid about it, and we were taking these things. There's a company there's a great pun called Urine Luck, all right? And it's basically like a vitamin B12 bomb, all right? Mm-hmm. And you just pop these with a load of water on your flight, and essentially, if you get asked to do a urine test, your body's withholding anything that might show up for it's essentially how to pass a drug test, but we didn't feel that we needed to do this, but we just weren't taking any chances.
Yeah. So you whacked your Barocca.
Yeah, but there's me and Elliot. You've got these things. They're like, like the cinema-sized fruit pastels.
Yeah,
those kind of
buggers,
quite big, aren't they? Like huge bumblebees, right?
Yeah.
Well, these tablets are like this. So we're asking the flight attendants, essentially, can we have about 3 litres of water, please? And we're having to have these 12 tablets or so, necking this water. And of course, by the time we got off the plane, I mean, the pair of us are literally like about to piss ourselves. All right, we are so full of water and trying not to look shifty.
At least you're hydrated.
Yeah, hydrated.
You're in the desert.
Yeah. It was mad. It was completely mad. But we were so paranoid about the whole thing. But the daft thing about that is that we only really got clued up on the rules and the laws in Dubai on the second trip. So the first trip that we did to Dubai, we just went there completely ignorant, and I've got photographs of like the press crew. We're all shit-faced, all like riding like these statue horses in the middle,
holding unmarried women's hands.
We were essentially begging the authorities to lock us up, and didn't realise just how stupid we were being.
Yeah.
But come the second trip, we were fully clued up. I think it's because of the Groove Rider case or something like that. It happened.
Well, you
dial
into the culture, don't you? And you sort of pick up on stories, especially if you're going to be going somewhere. So you tend, especially when you've been so affected as you deeply were by the rubber glove treatment that you received in Canada.
I just for the record, no rubber glove was. We didn't quite get to the.
You glossed over that part.
Yeah.
But. Yeah, there was latex involved at some point, and you can't deny there's not latex involved in your life.
They were all wearing latex gloves, which was
no fingerprints left.
Deeply concerning.
Deeply, understatement, my friend.
Deeply, yeah.
Anyway, Dave, thanks for sharing those tales. The trio of tales, actually, if I recall. Very funny, man, and you're a great storyteller. I just want to know, like, to bring it back to sort of today, because we're in our little sort of safety pod here. But how are you finding life right now? And what you're most wishing for, bro?
I want to return to normality. I want to get back to gigging. I want to get back to working properly. I want all the tours that have been postponed over the past year to happen again. And I want to hug all my friends. I want to party. I want to see my kids at parties playing with other kids and not have to tell them to, don't get too close and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, this year, this summer, that's what I'm looking forward to. A huge slice of normality. And I'm working towards, in terms of the band, end of August, then we really, we really kick in then. And so I think if we don't have a gig before August, we'll have gone 18 months without playing a gig after playing constantly for 20 years.
Yeah.
And then we've got 3 gigs back to back. And, we were joking the other day. It's like, is that too few a gig? Can we call that a tour? But it's going to feel like that for me will be the moment where it feels like we are really back to normal. When the band plays a gig in front of a proper crowd.
I suppose that means that because everything underneath that has to get into some format of collective motion before we, as a community, as a country, with the laws that are stipulated around us. Until you're gigging, man, there isn't anything normal, really, is there? So there's still we're still held back. So that's a great sort of goal.
Yeah.
Miss Disco. So when Miss Disco opens up the world again, and all the other bands out there and all the other live performers that get together, basically when they strum their first tune, they sing their first lick, that's it. That's when it starts.
Well, I mean, it's also the whole thing about a Miss Disco gig is that in the true spirit of disco and Studio 54, you leave your cares at the door and you walk in and you are all one big happy family in that room. Everybody's there for the same reason, which is to dance and have a good time, a shared experience. And it's just, I always say that the gigs with the band, they're just 2 hours of joyous escapism. And fuck knows we could all do with that right now. So I'm thinking the nature, put it this way, right now, I'm not sure I'd want to go and see a Lennon-Cohen tribute right now. I've had enough of introspection and, and all that kind of stuff.
Leonard.
But he's great. But right now, after the past year,
mate, we need disco, we need fun, we need fancy dress.
We need to dance. We need to
party,
dance together.
Happily, not introvertly, not in the corner on your own, not to some... Just, it's like the operation to get together, isn't it?
Yeah.
To reconnect, properly reconnect.
That communion, the communal kind of shared experience. It's going to be emotional. I think we're all. I think when the band gets back together to start rehearsing again, I think that first rehearsal is going to be emotional because, we've not actually been in the same room as each other since our last gig, which was the 15th of February 2020. So, because there are like extended family, we spend a lot of time together at shows and
it takes a hell of an effort. For those who think you just tip up with your instruments, there's so much time preparing, like organising.
A normal gig will rock up about 4:00 in the afternoon and get in at.
Start powdering your face, pluffing your old afro up.
Keeping your todger warm. So in those spandex pants.
I love them.
Yeah. I changed my trousers after playing one gig where it was so cold on the stage. I was just thinking, these trousers are telling everyone what the temperature is.
It's because you don't move enough.
No,
you're a bass guitarist.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, just stood there
but I look cool.
Yeah, but no, it was. But we can then, it's a good 12-hour day. From the moment that you leave your house to getting home again, it's often 12, 15 hours.
Yeah, you gotta love it, man.
It's a long day. But we spend a lot of time as a band hanging out together. So playing poker or Cards Against Humanity, or if you're in we played at some carnival at Wells next to the sea, which was great. So we were just going down and get some fish and chips and down by the sea. So, you do spend a lot of cool time together, but you realise that if you're playing, kind of about 40 or 50 gigs a year or something, whatever it might be on any particular year, that is a lot of time that you spend with those people. So you become very close. And, we've been playing together for 20 years, nearly 20 years. So to see everyone regularly, almost every weekend, maybe 2-3 times over a weekend, and then not see each other for over a year is so weird. It is so strange. And also, when Strictly, the series of Strictly Come Dancing was on, I said to Claire, I don't think I've ever seen so many episodes of Strictly in one series because I'm never here on a Saturday. So the plus side of it is that I've got to have a lot more family time at weekends. But the downside of that is that by and large, we've been able to do fuck all, Yeah,
you've missed out on the creativity side of things.
There's, you can go and walk in a field or somewhere in the countryside a million times, and that's great. But you can't go out to dinner together.
You want to do all of it.
You can't go to a theme park.
You're greedy. That's what you're saying. Yeah. You want it all, pal.
Well, exactly. Just
so do I.
What you would consider normal activities.
Yeah.
That kind of has just become a very narrow kind of spectrum of things that you can do. So, but anyway, so when we get back together, I think that's going to be
that's what you most wish for. Yeah, I think you probably sum up the sentiment of any artist, creative, sort of, you're speaking for everyone there. I think
it's your workplace.
Yeah, I'm the same, man. I'm with people, so I build up those relationships. It's a relationship building exercise. It's obviously it's an opportunity to be creative, but it's really about what you create in and around that. It's your tribe, isn't it?
Yeah, that is definitely our tribe.
Yeah, and it's a fantastic tribe.
But with your job as well, I mean, it must be really strange seeing and talking to so many people non-stop every day, and then nothing.
Do you know what? It is like you close the door on something in the terms of what COVID sort of brought upon us. And, being a conversationalist, the second hit round, I'd set myself these goals. So I was probably one of the few people that walked out that door and I was actually excited, but that's because I was able to tune in before, because I'd learned from the first one. The bit that I really hankered for was actually I miss blokes. I lived with 3 women, 3 daughters and my missus. And as much as, I've really enjoyed that time, I've taken the positives always from everything. And there are elements when we reopen, and I think most people probably don't think about this because I don't know if they think that far into the future, but they'll miss their COVID life because we've had time, because we've had the ability to dial in to the closer things around us, we've had more time to listen to the internal chatter, to respect, the things that really matter. And so to me, I want to be quite careful and curious how I sort of not just go nil by mouth from everything. I want a clean transition between my new life. Don't get me wrong. I want to party to Miss Disco. I'm often invited onto the stage. I don't know if I'm fit enough for pulling off those moves. I don't even know if the offer's still there.
If you're supple enough,
Mate, I'm supple enough. If you follow me on Instagram, you can see I've been training. But
I have seen that. I think you're insane. Like some of the shit you've been doing. You can get me in an icy cold river.
Well, you do that. You just have a pair of waders on. You connect with nature. We do the same thing.
There's a huge difference between how cold I am and how cold you are.
Yeah, you're catching even those tiny little trouts are a lot bigger than what I'm packing. So at those particular moments. But this really isn't about me anyway. Yeah. So Dave, it's always charming to chat to you, and we've talked about sort of some highs, some lows, some wishes, some wants. Do you value the assets that you gain from your mistakes?
That is the only way to learn, I think. So if you show me someone who says they haven't made mistakes, and I'll show you a liar. But making mistakes isn't a problem. It's how you learn from them. You have to learn from mistakes, otherwise, making the mistake was in vain, if you like. It was. So there's a silly one in particular which I just really regret, and it was just through being so naive at that age. But there was a band that I had when I was about 18, 19 that I loved dearly, and through complete naivety and listening too much to our drummer, we started trying to change the band rather than appreciating what it was, what we had. And so as a result of that, we royally fucked up this band and really upset somebody who, thank God, I'm still very, very close to this day. They have forgiven me for it. But I really regret that, because I wasn't ready for that band to stop. And we really just got into our stride and started, this was an original band, and we were really starting to write stuff that I was aware this is actually really strong now. And just as we got to that point, we fucked it after 2 years, and it was over, completely over. And I've always regretted that. So I've tried not to make that mistake again, and I don't think I have. I've been in lots of bands, and only on 2 occasions have I badly fallen out with someone in 30 odd years.
That's pretty good, man.
I think so. I mean, one of them was with who you're interviewing tomorrow, Dave. I mean, Dave, bless him.
He is a front man. He's a lead singer. They're notoriously slightly more. Sort of, they have to have their emotions that little bit more closer to the surface. Again, not that I'm defending him.
No, listen, I wouldn't have a problem if you did, because he's got his point of view and I've got my point of view, but at the same time, we fell out a very long time ago. I mean, we were still very naive about how the industry works and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I mean, I've had a lot of time to think about it, because I am sad that I fell out with Dave, because we were really good mates. And I know that, he's got no time for me, and I don't blame him, because I've had no time for him. But you do fall out with people, and it is sad. But I think a part of that, though, is that we were in each other's pockets way too much. And, You know, I mean, Dave had his rows with pretty much everyone in the band.
I lived with him.
Right. Okay.
Everyone he's in a band with, everyone he's lived with at times. I'm sure I'm really looking forward to meeting him tomorrow, because I think when I mentioned that I was having a chat with you, he seemed genuinely excited. And he was like, "Oh, say hello to Dave for me."
Oh, really?
So,
Nice. Well, look, Dave, hello, mate.
So the bridge of friendship and forgiveness is always available to us. It's just about making that pathway yours.
I would, I've not really had the opportunity for a long time I haven't seen Dave, I haven't spoken to him. But I'd like to think if he walked in here right now, I'd like to think we might just actually laugh at each other's silliness and try and put it behind us. I'd be open to that, because life's too short.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, we did fall out, but it was kind of epic handbags at 10 paces, really.
I think.
Or to quote Spinal Tap, we were screaming at each other like a pair of, no offence, Ponzi hairdressers.
I'm a barber, mate, none taken.
Personal stylist.
My manscape is a little bit different, the way I view everything.
Yeah. So we had good times with that band, Dirty Harry, back in the 90s. But it's just one of those things. But I don't know how he's doing. But anyway, I'm waffling about Dave now. So
well, no, it's important, mate. The thing is, like, we're sort of, there's no need to gloss over sort of like mistakes, and it can be the most simplest things of like not understanding something, because who is wise enough at the moment they're living through something, an episode, who you can't look retrospectively or with oversight at that moment. It's afterwards. So it's not always what you do on the day, it's what you do the day after. So a little forgiveness, reconnect, change your opinion.
I mean, you can't help how you feel about things, and it's like with a lot of things in life. Sometimes you look back and you think, I don't regret what I did, but I do regret how I went about expressing my displeasure, if you like, and I wouldn't do that the same way. Yeah, I mean, it's like, I'd like to think that with what's happened with Uncle Funk is that I've pretty much kept my counsel on that, but I know what I think about that.
Yeah. Do you know what? Like, Miss Disco. Like, the thing is, you sort of had an era, and it's almost like you when you gain like a sense of better judgment, and you do get the opportunity to look over what you're trying to sort of creatively produce for the loves of what you do. You've got a cool band called Miss Disco. A name is just a name, but it's a very good name, Dave. You then trace back the origins of that, because we adapt as tribes. So the tribe comes from the DNA. But what you've done is you've injected it with like the nuance, and you've given it a different beat, and you've taken away an element, or an element has gone.
Uncle Funk is like a really old name, right? Because I mean, that's a
Didn't Dave trial for you? Dave Pritchett, just on a separate side thing.
Well, okay, well, I'll come to that. So the history of Uncle Funk is that band was formed by a guy called Will Bowden, all right, who was the original bass player in Uncle Funk when, in the early 90s, Uncle Funk was an original funk rock band. The disco thing didn't happen until, I think, about 1997, something like that, after Uncle Funk had split up, because I think Cy had been kicked out of the band, but then they kind of got back together. But in that time where Cy was kicked out, they auditioned Dave, because Dave at the time was the singer, or had been the singer, in a band from the Harlow area called Oi Oi Savoy.
Yeah.
Right, which, I don't know if you ever saw that band.
I didn't see them, but I know.
They were brilliant, right? I mean, they were so good. Because we were all at
won
Harlow
loads
College.
Of accolades, like
they won the Harlow Rock Contest. That was essentially...
That was a banging joint back in the day.
Yeah, it was. And that was essentially the pinnacle of their career. One of these bands that came out of Harlow College, where we were all... It was like this gene pool. I think this really bitter guy who was a booker at the Screw hated us, right? Hated anyone that had anything to do with the music course over at Harlow College. I think he described us as an insular gene pool, all right? And but out of this scene came loads and loads of really, really good bands, right? So I was in this band called Wasting Pedro, which I loved to death.
I love that band.
That's the band.
Cy, the other Cy. Who was in that band?
Wasting Pedro. Oh, no. You're getting mixed up with Pedro Orange.
Oh, I am.
Yeah, which was a common thing, because weirdly, two bands with Pedro in their name just appeared on the scene at the same time. So we was in this band called Wasting Pedro. That's that kind of band which I was talking about earlier, that I really regret that split up when it did. I loved that band. But then there was also a band called Salamander's Dream, who became the Peaceniks and Fat Dragon, which I know you know and everyone around here knows.
Funny enough.
They were phenomenal.
Danny Piper on.
Yes,
week.
he's living in town now, isn't he?
Yeah,
So,
Danny's a great guy, yeah.
In fact, we bumped into each other and were just talking at each other so excitedly because we hadn't seen each other for a while. And he's got this box of CDs and tapes of their rehearsals and demos and everything. So he brought them round and I've condensed them. I've just got this incredible Dropbox folder of a lot of this. I know it's not all of the stuff. There's stuff that's still, a few gaps still missing, but they were great. So they came out of that scene, and Oi Oi Savaloy were this band that came out as well, and that was Dave's band. And they played the Harlow Rock competition that year and smashed it out the park. I mean, they were just so entertaining and such brilliant energy. And this guy called Mike Humphreys, who was in the band, and him and Dave together, it all just worked. They were excellent. But I think about within a few months of them winning that competition, it was over. They'd been and gone. Just one of those flash in the pan bands that were, if you saw them at the time, you won't forget it. They were great. So Dave auditioned for Uncle Funk, and he actually he was the front man in Uncle Funk for a while. And I remember I've got to tell a quick story about this, what's in Will's book, where they're playing a gig at the Royal Standard. Don't look for it; it's not there anymore. But anyway, they're playing a gig there, and Will said he spotted that there was like a gangway. You know, you sometimes get like a Bon Jovi concert at the front of the stage where Bon Jovi will just go running down the front and soak it all up. So they had one of these things there, and Will said that he wasn't going to miss his opportunity to throw a few rock god shapes down there. And he said they had all this dry ice and everything. He said it was just perfect. So he went flying down this, like, kind of, I don't know what you call it, like a catwalk kind of thing, but forgot that he had a lead that was plugged from his bass to his amp. And he said, I love the way he described it. He said, as he walked down this kind of catwalk with this rock god shape in his mind that he's about to throw, he said he felt a tug which he described as being akin to hooking a 30-pound cart. And as he looked behind him, he saw his guitar lead just fly out of his amp and go past him. And he said he was blind as a bat. He didn't used to wear his glasses on stage, and now he's feeling around in all this dry ice trying to find out where his lead is.
Massive problem.
He said it was his rock god moment was gone forever.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah. So Uncle Funk then became a disco covers band because they played a gig. I think they were asked to play at somebody's wedding or played a one-off gig, and they played a bunch of disco classics for a laugh.
Yeah.
And guess what? It went down really well. And they kept being asked, would you play at this event? Would you do this at this event? And that's what led to it becoming like one of the UK's first bona fide disco tribute bands. So, and I joined that band in 2002. You know, so it was, long time.
Yeah, it's good to sort of get the spade in the dirt and dig up some of those old memories, isn't it? It's
yeah, I am. I'm just thinking about so many gigs because all of these people we were all kind of at the same gigs and on the same scene. I mean, there was at the time there was a fantastic music scene in Walden in the 90s.
We had about 16, 17 pubs, mate.
Well, also what really helped was that we had the Walden Club. You know, when
mate, I still cut Roy's hair to this day. He lives in Finchley. Lovely bloke. I'll have to get him on.
He really, you should do actually.
He's a great bloke to talk to.
I mean, he cracked me up. There's something which went down in Dirty Harry kind of folklore. Because everyone was playing at the Walden Club, all the bands. It was like every Friday, in particular, one of the bands from the Walden scene would be down there with another band, you know, as the support act. Yeah. So there was actually quite a healthy scene, and there was a big sort of Walden Live column in the Saffron Walden Weekly News, and so we played our first gig with Dirty Harry at the Walden Club, and that went really well. It was sold out, and Roy Cox obviously had a good payday behind the bar because. About a week after we played this gig, which I think was in September 96 or something like that, he said, what are you doing tomorrow night? I said, nothing, what's that? He goes, meet me down here about 7 o'clock. I'll buy a drink. I want to talk to you about something. I was like, okay. So I went and saw Dave Pritchett and said, I don't know what Roy Cox wants to talk to us about, but he's basically invited us down for a beer. All right. So, okay. So we go down there. So Ken didn't come and Lee, our drummer, didn't come. So we get down there. So we've got. I always remember we both had 2 halves of lager. All right. And no, that's what we ordered because we figured we're not going to be here long, right? So we just said. So, but he just said to me, he goes, right, how about? And he framed it with his hands, like, how about Dirty Harry's Christmas Spectacular, right? and this is before Phoenix Nights, but that was the kind of reaction.
I remember that club as well.
and me and Dave, we looked at each other and didn't, we just caught each other's eye for just a second, which just basically said, you're thinking what I'm thinking. And it's like, try not to laugh. So we were like, oh, okay, well, yeah, thanks. We'll have a think about it. We'll go and speak to the rest of the band. Of course, we went back and we told Ken about it. Ken instantly got his pens out and started drawing this Dirty Harry Christmas spectacular with Santa Claus and like the reindeer. And we were just pissing ourselves at the thought of this kind of, real cocky, arrogant, belligerent alternative rock band having like Santa's Grotto down at the Walden Club. It was like, nah. That you got us all wrong, Roy. That ain't happening, mate. So we never did it, but I've never forgotten Dirty Harry's Christmas Spectacular.
Yeah. Knowing Roy as well, I can imagine, especially because he was your archetypal sort of pub landlord. He'd got the darts teams down. He really knew how to work everybody, and he was such a character. He still is a character.
He was a good bloke. Right, that did a lot for this town and did, Saffron Walden still, to its eternal shame, has not got a proper venue.
There isn't a bloody venue to cram or to safely put like 400 or 500 fun, funky people to want to listen to music or entertainment.
It's another.
There clearly is. There's something missing here. We're missing something.
I don't want to sound like I'm bashing the town. I'm not. But if you've lived here this long, you'll spot where it could be improved.
I agree. I totally agree.
I'm really frustrated with Saffron Hall because that was a glorious opportunity for this town to have a multi-purpose venue, but it's actually a real specialist arts venue.
It's very special,
right?
yeah.
Yeah. So we looked into about maybe putting a gig on there, and it's like, well, it was difficult to do at Christmas because obviously the schools break up, and they've got to staff it and even if we could put a gig on, you can't take a drink into the hall. So it's, you can't actually have an event where people are dancing. Well, they need to. They need to do
you know
that,
what? I cut the guys' hair.
It's a real shame.
Who, actually, I can see the use of me, like having these conversations being a little bit further because they instantaneously, the way my mind works, I think, I know how to link this up because I know how much roughly that place needs to pull in revenue just to keep itself afloat so that they don't have to independently go to the government for handouts to just it's really quite difficult. So I think that there is an opportunity and I think that there is an energy to be able to use it. I'm not sure of the stipulations, but I'm going to make that one of my missions, Dave, to find out when I cut that guy's hair again if it's still the same guy, if he's still within work when we get out of this.
It'd be interesting because
Does it have to be Christmas, mate? Why does it have to have snow on the top of it? Can't you do it in the middle of summer?
We might do, but it's nice at Christmas though. We like even for us, it's normally the last gig that we play of the year. So
you're hanging on to that, but you're under a new banner now, son. So
we've already announced that gig. So we are, we're going to be playing, and I'm very confident it's going to happen now. But we've already announced our kind of traditional December the 23rd gig, but it's just going to be called Miss Disco now instead of Uncle Funk.
I don't think you should just put it like that. It's just going to be called, you've gone a bit flat there. And it's going to be called Miss Disco. Yeah. Come on.
Well, it's like...
Merry Miss Disco.
It's like everyone's going to know us. We're the same band doing the same thing.
If we mention it enough times, they might, and they listen.
So, but that gig's happening on December the 23rd for sure. I say for sure. I'm as confident as I can be.
Is there a discount for any of the listeners out there? Can we impart some sort of offering? Half price to the man with the biggest wig. Used to be me, that did.
It was only about 3 people listening to this, aren't there?
Currently, there's me, you, and Howie. Yeah, but there's a wider audience we expect to tune in.
What? This is going to be broadcast? You never told me that. I'd never have agreed to this. Yeah, I'm off. Taxi.
I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's move it over. I'm having a great time here, man. I just wanted to sort of throw a slight curveball, but it's not that curvy. Just give me the lowdown as you see it. Just pick a topic, yeah? All right. Sex, drugs and rock and roll.
Rock and roll.
Go on. Give me something. I want to learn something about rock and roll from you right here, right now.
If you're working with James Brown, make sure you call him Mr. Brown.
Okay.
Yeah, how's that?
Yeah, that's a fucking good... that's a good cue. All right. Well, that's a good answer. I'll take that, Dave. Yeah. There's another thing that sort of I'm curious about. Obviously... you're a great creative. Like you've sort of given us a little summary of some of the spectacular moments that you've been involved in, like people you've met, all that kind of stuff. Like as we sort of start to sort of look further in the position that we are now, like where you are today, like when you're looking out to the different acts, when you're looking out to the other creative offerings, I know you've mentioned your love of Strictly, but is there a band, is there, someone coming through, is there a type of music that you're right into? What should we be listening to?
Well, there's a band that I really like that they're called My Baby, and I was with Miss Disco's guitar player, Flash Jackson, Nick Davies. So he'd been at Glastonbury for a couple of days already. He got there like on the Tuesday or something ridiculous, right? And I got there like literally at the last minute on the Friday because we were playing on the Friday, Saturday and Sunday, right? So we got down there and something happened, Si upset. He'd already upset me. And so I was actually really upset. And Nick had been on something, been on the end of something similar from him for a different reason. So I was just wishing I wasn't at Glastonbury, to tell you the truth, because it was the first time that we'd played there, and I'd given up the first 3 days of our first family holiday with Jack and Ivy.
Oh, right? Yeah, you've made sacrifices.
Big sacrifice. And not only that as well, and I've got to say this as well, that every time you see us on stage, there's somebody else that you can't see who's holding the fort for us to be able to do what we're doing.
Yeah, I totally
right?
understand that. Yeah.
So this was it felt like a huge ask to go to Claire and say, you're not going to believe this, but we've been asked to play Glastonbury. So Claire's like, oh, great, when is it? I'm like, it's exactly when we're on our holiday. And so, she goes, well, you've got to play it. And I was like,
I love Claire, by the way.
Yeah, I love you, Claire. Thank you. So Claire was super cool about it. And Claire's mum went up and stayed with Claire and the kids. So
played your part.
Yeah, just basically, to spread the load. So I got down there and then obviously, something happened that I won't bother going into, but it really pissed me off and upset me. So Nick was like, come on, let's go for a walk, because we weren't on until midnight. So we had all evening, and Nick and we went out and we got something to eat. And so we was like, let's go and get lost at Glastonbury. We've got 4 hours to kill. Let's go. And we walked out into, I don't even know what part of the site it was. We ended up in this tiny, tiny little wood. And all I could see was purple lights and smoke, like all through the trees and everything. And I could hear this band playing, and we were like, well, look, something sounds good over there. Let's go and have a look. And we got there, and it was this band called My Baby, who just at the time released their second album called Shamanade, all right? And I watched them, and people were losing their shit to this band, like really dancing. I watched them, I was like, they are excellent. Totally amazing. I mean, by the time we walked away, I'd already downloaded
a complete original band.
Yeah, but it's a real kind of melting pot of all the kinds of music that I like. So it's very much got its roots in blues and funk, and also like raga as well, and gospel, but it's all got this and psychedelia, and it's got this kind of dance beat behind it. I mean, some of their tunes are just beautiful acoustic songs that aren't dance tunes, but when you see them live, their show's very much about making you dance. So all this kind of rootsy, organic music has got this contemporary thing to it. It's just something you have to check this band out.
Yeah,
they're
brilliant. Really original.
Yeah, and that made a hell of an impact on me, and I'm now a big fan of the band. I've seen them, about 8 times maybe. I've met the band as well, which was I met them in Tottenham, which was a proper fanboy moment. And they're great. And everyone that I've ever turned that band onto seems to think they're brilliant as well, which is nice. So I know that there's a lot of people in town that have gone to see My Baby because of my recommendation. So if My Baby are listening, you probably owe me a few quid, but at least buy me a beer. If I ask, can I be on the guest list? You say yes. Yeah. So they're good. That's something that I'm really into. I really, really like that. But the honest truth is, I'm slightly embarrassed to say this, but I don't listen to that much new music. And I think that's a combination of, I think, my age, in the sense that, today's kind of music that's aimed at, if you like, today's generation.
I suppose you make a prejudgment about it all, don't you?
It's just not aimed at my generation.
Yeah.
Like every generation has its music, right?
Yeah.
So the current music isn't aimed at our generation. If you like it, great.
Yeah.
But I always say I don't envy a band trying to make it in the 21st century, because when we first started playing in bands in the sort of early 90s. You only, in terms of the history of rock and roll, you had the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and the 50s. So you had this kind of 35-year period, right? Well, now you've got a 70-year period of amazing music that has come before whatever a new band tries to come up with today. All right, so that in itself wouldn't be so much of a problem if it wasn't for the fact that thanks to streaming and Spotify and what have you, and YouTube, everybody has that history of the past 70 years of rock and roll and blues and reggae and punk and disco and funk and prog and new wave and new romantic and baggy and grunge and, all of those things that happened in that time period. Now you can access that amazing music like that. Everybody's got 70 years worth of rock and roll on their phone at their fingertips. Now, if you're a new band, you're trying to be noticed and heard above all of that great music that's come before you. And I don't think it's an exaggeration to say you could spend your whole life discovering music from the past 70 years.
Yeah.
Right? It's very easy to find amazing music from looking back. It's just as easy to find amazing music looking back as it is looking forward. In fact, I think it's easier to find music looking back.
I agree. I totally agree because it's marked itself.
Yeah, and so now any new band is instantly held up to all those great artists of the past 70 years. And I think it's an impossible thing to live up to try. So years ago, I had the great honour of working with Barry White. And I remember,
of love.
Which he hated that term.
Just because he was a big guy.
Absolutely hated it. I remember his manager sort of saying, he goes, his name was Ned Shankman, it was his manager. And he goes, I know it's a term of endearment, but Mr. White just doesn't get it, And it's like, so anyway, but it was more of, even though he was known around the world as the Walrus of Love, I think I'm right in saying that was very much a UK kind of nickname.
Well, that's how I
But it was all out of affection, of course. But anyway, we were doing this interview and he was asked, and this is like in itself nearly 20 years ago, but he was asked, do you think that artists will be able to achieve longevity in the way that acts such as himself had? And he said that he didn't think that was likely. He said that he thinks there'll be a lot of people that say, I made an album once. All right. And I think he was right. I think to achieve longevity now is so difficult. And I think part of that is down to the fact that, if you were growing up in the 60s or the 70s or the 80s, and even the 90s, to a lesser degree, you could capture your audience very easily by being on Radio 1 or MTV or on one of the 4 terrestrial channels, right? Now, you're trying to get people's attention when your audience is spread out over thousands of media outlets and platforms. So to have that moment, that kind of where you hit the critical mass, where enough people are paying attention for you to cross over and have a career, I think that is a task that I don't envy. I mean, if I know everything I now know today, if I'm aged 18 now, would I try and make it in a band? No. I'm going to be clear, this is not a criticism of people or musicians that say this, but I've seen a few posts over a couple of years where artists have really, really moaned that, they were playing, say, a gig down at, I don't know, for example, the King's Arms, right? And hardly anybody was there, right? And it's like, yeah, but look what you're competing with. And you just everybody, if you've got a Wi-Fi connection, and broadband, you've got world-class entertainment at home, right? You've got everybody's got a cinema library that they can just dial into. Yeah. I mean, nobody has, you might have kept your favourite DVDs, but anybody who's got a shelf full of DVDs is living in the 90s, right? Or 20 years ago, because you don't need it. It's all there on demand.
Yeah, it's just a space, isn't it?
It's all there on demand. So, you've got everything at your fingertips. You've got all, like I say, the history of popular music at your fingertips. It's all there. You've got world-class gaming. Gaming is just, is obviously huge. You can watch a football match, a Premier League football match on TV pretty much any night of the week now. It's like what you're competing with to get people into a venue is on a scale that's, that just makes it harder and harder to compete. So my point being is if what you're offering is bang average, don't expect anybody to turn up. All right? You can't just say we're playing down the Dog and Duck tonight see you there.
Yeah.
All right? Because your mum might turn up, but don't expect anyone else to turn up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's you've got, if you're going to promote yourself, do it properly.
Yeah, you've got to have professionalism.
Make people think, I'll tell you what, I'll have a night off from my phone or Spotify or Sky Cinema or an Xbox or whatever.
Or even in your fitness club and
Whatever,
tribe that you're, whatever. There's so many
stuff.
really well put together things that you can expend your energy on, isn't there? So why am I going to put it to you?
Yeah, but it is hard. It is difficult for
I
bands.
mean, I was, one of the things that I wanted to ask you is, and we've sort of just pretty much done that, was, if there was something that you could advise, being a rock legend like you are, what advice? And I think you've just sort of summed it up. What would you advise a young potential bass guitarist, singer, songwriter? I think the idea, what I've taken from it, if you don't mind me just giving my little bit of value first, would be to make sure that it's really fun, that you want to do it. You incorporate like good friendship and have an extreme adventure along the way. Use it as a learning opportunity. Yeah. And just be honest with what you're putting out there and the level of ambition, but don't be afraid to be involved in something creative, but to have the bigger dreams. Just remember, we can't all be at the tip of the tribe.
I mean, look, I don't want it to sound trite or glib or anything, but if you don't enjoy it, don't do it. And if you do enjoy it, then just do it to the best of your ability. I mean, I can hear myself saying it. It sounds ridiculous, but because it's so obvious. But yeah, if you enjoy it, do it and
practice it. And practice makes progress.
Also, I mean, if you're talking about playing an instrument, then again, YouTube is just an incredible resource that wasn't available to anyone at my age when they were starting out. So, I mean, you can now. There are tutorials for every instrument.
Everything.
Right?
There's a tutorial for everything.
And also through sometimes in case of that people getting hold of the masters and are able to take individual tracks and upload them, but also from computer games, there's a lot of people that are taking the audio for kind of big hits or famous songs. And I'm not sure exactly how you do it, but you can somehow break the file down so that it's layered. You've got the stem cells, as it were, so you'll have just the drum track or the audio track or the bass track or whatever. And you can hear that in its entirety with nothing else going on. And, all of a sudden, songs that you may have been playing. I had this happen just the other day, right? I'll give you an example of why it's easier to learn now and you have so many tools at your disposal. You know the song, That's the Way I Like It?
Yeah,
right?
Of course I do.
So I've been playing that song for 20 years, right? Yeah, and I watched this tutorial. I was watching this guy who, because I spent the past year trying to master Bernard Edwards' chucking technique, right? But I'm getting there, but it's just not ready to quite pull it out of the bag live yet. Anyway, so I was watching this guy, and there's this guy who's got this shit down perfectly, and I was watching it and in awe of it. And I was thinking, well, what else has he got on there? So I looked, and he's got a whole load of videos that he's uploaded, and there's quite a few disco classics on there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to watch this just to see if there's anything he's playing on there, and this guy's totally got it down clearly, that I'm not playing and either should be or could play, right? So I watched this particular track, and sort of that's the way, right? So the bass line is this sort of doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, doo-doo, right? So that's that's got to have been playing for 20 years. I watched this guy and just realised there's a huge part of that bass line that I've never played before, all right? And it was only because of hearing this guy play it with nothing else going on its own, isolated, that here it is. So it's this doo-doo, doo-doo-doo, boo-doo, right? And then doo-doo, boo-doo-doo, doo-doo, and you don't hear the doo-doo-doo. They don't hear the higher bit because of what else is going on with the band. But as soon as I played it, it felt so different. I was like, oh yeah, now I'm in the pocket. That is absolutely locked with the drums now. I get it. Right. I can't believe I didn't hear it because I've got a very good ear for hearing this stuff. But anyone can go online and see stuff like that. And if you've got something nearly nailed, you can spend half an hour on YouTube and come equipped to know how to nail it completely. Again, name dropping, but when I was interviewing John Taylor, he was talking. I said to him, "Have you seen all of these kind of Duran Duran bass tutorials that people are posting?" And he said, "Well, I haven't really seen them." He said, although when they were doing these warm-up shows, they played an album track that they would never normally play at like the arena shows, but they were playing these club dates. They played at the Junction in Cambridge, and there's a track off of their third album called Shadows on Your Side, and it's quite a sort of staccato, very busy bass line. And John was saying, he said, I hadn't played it for years, and then I was literally like, what am I playing? He couldn't work out what he did in 1983, right, so for this particular bass line. And then his roadie or his bass tech said, oh, well, look, I found this tutorial. There's this dude who's got it down.
He could teach you how to play your own music better.
So he basically watched a complete stranger. And I did say, did you contact this guy and let him know, like, thanks for the tutorial.
Me how to play my own
bass line. I'd forgotten how to play it. Yeah, and he said, no, I didn't. But he watched it and was like, of course, that's what I'm doing. There it is. There it is. So it's great for even learning your own material.
Yeah, I love that.
So it helped get a huge band ready for their warm up shows. It helped them prepare. So if a huge band can benefit from it, if you're just starting, believe me, you've got so much at your disposal to kind of consume. Just eat it all
I
up.
suppose you can really sort of like identify with, like what you're saying, the part you want to do. So you can just be picky, can't you? As opposed to you just going, at the age of 2 or whatever it was, I think it was 11, starting to sort of already emulate your favourite kind of thing. Your ear was for that particular thing.
Yeah.
Now we have the choice.
Yeah.
So although we have a world of choices, if it's music, you can go, do you know what? I'll have a little go at that. I'll have a little go at that. You haven't got to buy a kit. You haven't got to do this. You can just go online. You can tap away. You can go, no, it's not for me. You can sort of, speed read it, work out exactly where you are. You can take all that knowledge. So the thing is, I suppose the other end of that is that those who are really just magically great, the pioneers of the, Jimmy, I can't even do it holding up, left-handedly. But people like that, I don't think they're going to exist. I don't think the icons will necessarily come through because you can train anyone.
But I think the thing is, it's like everything has its day in the sun, all right? So like genres of music have their day in the sun, right? So like, blues, has at one point blues was the biggest genre of music.
Still is if you go to like
but now it's taken its place, as it's now established as one of the classic genres of music. So reggae, came along in the late 60s, or ska, or and then reggae in the 70s, and that's now had its big moment, where it was like the main. I
suppose the message in the content of the lyrics as well probably plays a part to the cultural times.
It's like all things. It's of its time, but if it's good enough, it will become timeless.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like jazz, blues, reggae, disco, funk. They are all genres of music that have, at one point in history been the dominant musical culture, and such a fantastic body of work comes out of that period that it becomes defined by the public as classic and timeless, and people listen to it forever, sort of thing. So it's. I mean, again, like footballers, maybe not quite as much now, but there was a period of time, certainly 10, 15 years ago, where footballers were just like the new movie stars, the new rock stars.
We looked at them as gods, Yeah,
exactly. So they, because, I mean, there were matches, you could go to a football match in the 80s and there'd be hardly anybody there. I mean, like the thought of going to a top flight match and you'd have to order your ticket in advance in the 80s and early 90s was almost ridiculous. It's like, why do I need to order
You'd be checking out what the menu of football was on the CBBC thing on your TV.
So page 302. That's right. Was it 302 or was that on the TV? And then 6601 or one of the two? It
seems bloody archaic. Yeah.
So I actually saw a mug that you can buy, a CFAX mug, and you can it's
like starting a fire with a stick. That's like the equivalent.
Yeah. But, I mean, years ago, I used to work down at Goddard's, like on a Saturday.
Good plug, Goddard's. Yeah, kitchens and bathrooms.
Exactly. The best shop in town, with the best people.
Electrical. And, love Simon.
Yeah.
Big shout out to Simon.
Yeah, big shout out to Simon. And so I used to spend Saturday afternoons just watching CFAX. You would watch...
And wrestling.
We'd have like a couple of TVs on with the division with our respective football teams on. So, it was just weird. We would spend ages watching, and you'd come around and you'd be scanning the CFAX screen to see if you notice that a goal's been scored.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. If a football match was sold out, it was almost news, all ticket affair sort of thing, But and then of course it come with the Premier League and what have you, and football became like real mainstream culture again. And I know it cleaned up its act with all the hooligans and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, for a period, even really the 90s into the noughties, football was just like huge. They became the new rock star. Rock stars, like, what is a rock star now? Like the classic.
So David Attenborough is my most favourite rock star.
Well,
there you go.
There you go. So yeah. So
that's what it is now.
it's subjective, isn't it?
Yeah. It's about what you think.
Rock star's a generic term for
someone that I look up
who's...
to, someone that sort of stands out in a crowd and I can focus on.
Yeah,
that's what it means to me.
So, but yeah, it's just one of those weird things. So where things just have their moment. Like I was just about to say, rock stars. That's such a 70s and 80s thing, really. Like the classic rock era. To think that is mainstream culture now, it's not. All right, it's popular, but it's not mainstream. It has its place. It has taken its place alongside all of those previous genres of music. And so, I know people bemoan, going, "Oh, fucking, Radio 2 doesn't play any rock music anymore." It's like, yeah, because it's not 1989. It's like that period of time has gone, and now it's all new soul and whatever flavour of the day is.
They hit it hard, don't they? Whatever is popularist, they hit it so hard they don't have time to put out every single. Like you've just made a massive point. We don't have time to go through the back catalogue of what's amazing to you particularly. So you end up changing your radio station.
But that's another thing. It's like, do people listen to the radio to discover music anymore?
I do, but only Annie Mac on a Friday night. Normally when I used to come back from the gym on a Friday night, and I used to, and it's not a long drive, it's not a long enough drive. I love a bit of Annie, because she always introduced something new.
Well, the reason I say that, though, is that you can create a playlist on Spotify, and then the algorithm of identifying everything that you've put in there comes up with a kind of your radio station based on what you like. Here's just what we think, are pretty confident you'll like the majority of these tunes.
Just to keep you on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because they're competing with you going to Netflix.
So it's like Radio 2 these days. I don't think Radio 2 is where people discover new music. I've seen records go onto the playlist, the A-list at Radio 2, and sell no copies, in real terms whatsoever, despite the fact it's been played to 15 million people a day. I always think that the music at Radio 2 is the wallpaper in the background to the personalities chatting. In between all of that. Six Music is different. Six Music is a great station to discover music, and I think that's where people who buy gig tickets and what have you, that's where they're really listening. For, the kind of
the type of people you're tapping into
with the real appetite for discovering and wanting new music. That's a great station. But I think it's become radio as a medium to discover new music is still important, but it's not the only way now of discovering new music. I mean, YouTube is the biggest streaming platform for music, which I was surprised when I found that out, because I just assumed it was Spotify, but it's not. It's YouTube.
I introduced the girls to music because obviously I like the visual. If I'm going, this is the guy that I'm listening to, so I can paint the picture for them as well. So Bob Marley. You need to see Bob Marley. You need to see him. So we'd go to YouTube. But I tend to what I do now is I'll just say, can I listen to something like, just lately, I will say, kid you not, it's been Queen. So I've just been saying, I want to listen to some Queen. And then what it does, like you say with the algorithms, it just bangs out on my Alexa or my whoever you're talking to, your little Siri, and it will just play through. I don't even want to have the effort to pick it, so I let it go randomly. And do you know what the funny thing is? It's all old. I know nearly all the words to all the songs. The girls love it. We dance. We enjoy it. So it's I tend to spend most of the time sort of like rediscovering things because I wouldn't remember names. There's so much. Well, it's a great way to listen.
I mean, I do like the Craig Charles Funk and Soul show because he just plays some bangers that you can guarantee if you listen to that show from start to finish, you're bound to pick up at least 3 or 4 tunes that you've either not heard before or forgotten that you love.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, of course, what happens, you you'll go onto Spotify and find that tune that he's just played to add to your own playlist or whatever. And then you end up just going down the rabbit hole because that tune, when it finishes, plays something else you're likely to. And it goes and goes and goes.
It's a perpetual cycle, isn't it? Yeah.
But it only lasts so long, though, because you could be listening to like 8 banging funk tunes. And then all of a sudden, randomly, a Talking Heads song will come on. You just think, okay, this algorithm has run its course. I don't really understand how that works, but, you can't let it
loses
run forever.
the mood. I suppose the thing is,
it drifts
it's where
off.
Technology cannot show empathy or the actual feelings which go behind like what the creative offering that you're trying to dive into. Eventually it imparts your company and you move on to the next thing.
I just put in. I just fancied listening to some old school rock, so I just put that in as a search and found some playlist on there that someone else had put together, and it was brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. And so again, it's that in itself is if I hate the term influencer because it's
it is though, isn't it? It's influencing the way that you use the technology around you. They're making it very simple. We're all like water, aren't we, mate? I don't even want to make my own playlist because I can't be asked to put the time in. I'd rather spend the time listening.
Yeah,
and I'm happy to listen to tunes of all description.
But they're like, it's like looking for a menu where you like everything that's on it, and it's never been easier to do that. But going back to what we were saying ages ago, I wouldn't envy being, a new band right now. I think it's a really tough thing, and you don't see as many bands as you used to anyway. Just the logistics of touring, it's so expensive to tour that if you're a band, I mean, you've got 4 or 5 hotel rooms a night, and just the general cost. Whereas if you're a solo artist and people play a lot to backing tracks, yeah, well, I don't know. It's just cheaper to tour, or you don't have to pay people as much because not everybody's on. It's not an equal split of money or something like that. Yeah. It's weird. It's just the whole thing is you just don't see bands as much. I'll tell you another thing, which I don't know if you've noticed this, but the charts are irrelevant.
I haven't ever paid attention.
The chart. I mean, it's something you stick on a press release and says, yeah, it was number 1. But no one cares. Every now and again, you have a huge tune that comes along that everybody just loves and just becomes omnipresent, for a summer or something like that. Thank God that still happens because it's great when there's just a tune that everybody seems to love. I mean, although it gets overplayed to the point where you're sick of it, like Uptown Funk or something like that. I mean, you couldn't have a sporting or TV or radio ident without that being the soundbed to it. It's got a point. I mean, Happy was another example, and Get Lucky as well. All great songs, but played to death because they just crossed over to everyone was listening to them.
Yeah, you can't turn to those platforms without sort of actually trying to actually make the point of listening to what you want to listen to because that's what you're going to get offered.
But you're not listening to it because it's number 1 in the, to use a really old-fashioned term, the hit parade. Pop pickers. You're listening to it because it's present. It's on all the streaming platforms, the YouTubes, it'd be on computer games.
Well, you end up silencing your radio in your car, don't you? Because you're fed up of it. Yeah, and you're fed up with the boring old dross that they spend talking about in between. It's all that's all the same old shit as well.
You don't care whether a song that's huge and everywhere that everybody's singing like at a particular point in time. You don't care anymore that it's number 1 or been number 1 for
how many weeks? Who holds that record? Just on a bit. Is it Bryan Adams for that? Because I was trying to think of this.
Bryan Adams or Wet, Wet, Wet
for the Prince of Thieves thing.
Yeah, it's Everything I Do for You. That was number 1 for
it was like 22 weeks. Was that it?
It was like all summer and all autumn one year.
It was mental, wasn't it? But each week, this is how dialed in we all were. It became a bit of a marathon. It's like, is it still going to be fucking... And you almost felt, I need to buy another single just to keep it there because I want it to break the record now.
It becomes a mini shared soap opera that people start talking about then. But it's the same with the Wet, Wet, Wet song, Love Is All Around.
I love that song.
So,
wasn't it? What movie was that on? Was that
4 Weddings and a Funeral?
Yeah.
I've got a great story I've got to tell you about that, right? So I used to work with this radio plugger called Martin Nelson. He's retired now, okay? But he was a brilliant radio plugger, and he told me this story, and he said that he was the radio plugger for Love Is All Around, okay? For not the Trogs, I think it is, but the Wet, Wet, Wet one, right? Yeah. So he was saying that because it was number 1 for so long, they had to keep coming up with imaginative and fresh ideas for Top of the Pops each week, right? Because they couldn't just show the video all the time, and the band
week.
were like getting on. They couldn't pop in every week because they were getting on with their lives, you know. Oh God, we're still number one 3 months later. So they did this thing. So the band were in America. I couldn't tell you if they were touring. I can't think of any other reason why they would be there, but they were in Hollywood, right? And what they wanted was essentially to set the scene, the Hollywood sign in the background.
Do you know what? I have a vivid memory of this. I think I've seen it.
Great.
I
if you
think
can
I
remember
can see
this,
it. I think I can.
I'm going to give you some information about what happened just before they went live on air. So this park that the band was set up in, and all the the cameras and everything, and they've got it all at the angles, so the Hollywood signs in the background. But it was a park where all like kind of everyone who lived in the area would take their dogs for walks and stuff like that. And this is going out live, all right? So they're all there. They're all ready to go, and it's like 30 seconds to air, and all that sort of thing. And Marty Pellow was going through his kind of like Jesus hippie-looking phase, so he's barefooted. And just as they're about to go on air, it's like, 5, 4, Marty Pellow steps in a dog shit, barefooted, right?
Brilliant.
And literally he's like, oh, and like everyone spots this, right? But there's nothing anyone can do or say about it.
It's
3,
in the tone.
2, 1, and we're live. And it's like, and we're going over to Hollywood now. It's where we're, so there's Marty Pellow smiling, like giving, and of course it was, I feel it in my fingers, I feel it in my toes. I mean, it's like perfect. How they kept a straight face, I don't know. But he apparently, according to Martin, he tells me this true, and I have no reason to disbelieve him. He was there. He just said that whole performance live on Top of the Pops, Marty Pellow did it barefooted just after treading in a dog turd. Stop, you're live. So it's just, okay, bright eyes and teeth, people. We're live.
Brilliant. So anyway, Dave, we've got to sort of get to the point where we start to wind this up.
Yeah.
We talked about your creative projects that you've got going on at the moment with Miss Disco. So, basically, when this comes out, there's going to be loads of people intent on getting to know you a little bit further. So there will be people that queue into this. So when we can reconnect, how can the listeners reconnect as we open up again with you, follow what you're up to, the story of Dave Clarke, whatever you're into? How do they get hold of you on the social media platform?
Okay. Well, I don't want anyone to get hold of me, but I'd love people to get hold of my band, and that's Miss Disco, and you can do that from www.missdisco.co.uk.
Thank you.
And all social media platforms.
Brilliant.
And we got Instagram, YouTube,
got the whole lot.
Yeah, the Spotify.
So you're all sat there on your, your time stealers, your mobile phones, your tablets. Why don't you put a bit of that time to use and follow these guys, follow what they're up to, get ready to get your dancing shoes on. Dave, it's been great having you here today.
Nice one, thanks, mate. It's been a counselling session for me.
That's exactly what happens inside the barbershop, although we're in my padded cell.
Yeah.
You've qualified. We will let you out very shortly.
Thank you, mate.
So massive gratitude for you, Dave. It's such a nice thing. Dave Clarke, obviously currently going to be with Miss Disco. One of my old friends used to live on the same street as me, and it goes to show how the sentiment of supporting one another happens. I've supported him in various things that he's done throughout his history, and now he's supporting me by simply coming here to chew the fat, have a conversation. That's what it's all about, really. That's what happens in barbershops. That's what happens. That's what needs to get back to happening. All of us just getting back together, having a chat. And it does feel like therapy. Well, I feel therapized by you. I've learned so much.
I hope if anyone who's listening to this, I mean, I don't think we've been too guarded. So, I mean, I think if you were eavesdropping on a conversation that we were having over a pint down the pub, this would be the conversation that we were having if we were just looking back over the past 30 years. Yeah, exactly.
Genuine, authentic. Yeah. Naturally we want to sort of plug what we're doing and everything like that, but we're in an age where really we're very comfortable with our identities that we have. Yeah. You particularly, you've got, we've got layers of lessons learned, and by just having a chat, by going through different conversations, the spectrum of our life's tales, we can hopefully impart a little bit of wisdom, maybe some cues to how you can sort of get on with your day better, or if anything else, if you're bored of listening to all the other people on all their podcasts, just listen to mine. So anyway, thanks your royal funkiness, Mr. Dave Clarke, for being my guest today. DC, peace, love, power to your day, man.
Thanks, man. Good to speak to you. See you on the dance floor.
The PodBarber is a That Media and Design production, with Mickey at the mic and Howie at the controls. Just search the PodBarber on social and let's get connected.